You're checking my cards again, aren't you? Chloe froze, my leather wallet clutched in her hands. For a fleeting second, her face showed something I'd never seen in her, neither embarrassment nor guilt. It was cold calculation. My name is Ethan. I'm 38, and I catch people who steal money online. Chloe had been performing this little ritual for nearly 2 months now. A surreptitious shuffle through my wallet while I was in the shower, a quick glance at bank statements left on the desk when she thought my back was turned. After 12 years in cybersecurity at Sentinel Cybernetics, I recognize recon when I see it. Breaches look the same, whether in a network or in a marriage. She finally looked up, flashing the disarming smile she always deployed when caught red-handed. Just looking for the home improvement receipt, honey. You know how I get about tracking expenses. I knew exactly how she got about expenses. We lived in a sleek downtown Denver condo that strained our budget, because Chloe felt driven to match her friend Jessica's extravagant lifestyle. Jessica's feed was yachts and Aspen. We saved for a weekend in the mountains. I gestured toward my office. Home improvement receipts are in the top desk drawer, I said, my voice flat. The same place they've always been. She set my wallet on the nightstand, but a few degrees off from where I always left it. A tiny detail, insignificant to most, but in my world, the small details are everything. I had spent my entire career investigating financial fraud, corporate espionage, sophisticated identity theft rings, elaborate employee scams. It's always the same. Gain access, test small, then escalate. Chloe breezed past me, her perfume lingering in the air. I'm calling my sister about Christmas plans. I watched her ascend the stairs, the picture of domestic normalcy. Then, I picked up my wallet. Everything looked in place, but normal isn't secure. She hadn't taken anything. She'd been handling my cards, memorizing numbers, expiry dates, and CVVs. Financial fraud always begins with an opportunity, a moment of weakness in the system. Someone leaves a password on a sticky note, clicks a phishing link, or, in this case, trusts the wrong person completely. I walked into my home office and logged into the advanced fraud monitoring software I often used for client demonstrations at Sentinel Cybernetics. It was a powerful suite of tools capable of tracking financial activity across the globe in real time. If someone was planning to access my accounts without permission, they were about to discover that they had targeted the wrong system. That evening, with a knot tightening in my stomach, I set up a trap. I activated a new card and linked it to a segregated account funded with exactly $80,000. It was a honeypot. The very same sophisticated monitoring systems I used to ensnare corporate thieves would now be watching this single card, ready to log every transaction. GPS, timestamps, device IDs, IPs, enough to make the case airtight. I carefully slid the bait card into the primary slot in my wallet, exactly where my regular debit card usually sat. 5 days later, the card was gone. I met Chloe 7 years ago at a tech incubator. She was in the final year of her MBA program, supporting herself by working part-time at a boutique that sold high-end Swiss watches. She was intelligent, fiercely ambitious, and seemed utterly fascinated by the world of financial security. My work wasn't just a job to her. It was a source of endless intrigue. "You're like a modern-day detective," she'd said on our third date, her eyes wide with what I thought was admiration. "But instead of chasing criminals down alleys, you chase them through firewalls and encrypted networks." In hindsight, her questions had an edge. She asked incredibly detailed questions about payment processing systems, the mechanics of fraud detection algorithms, and the thresholds for transaction monitoring. I, blinded by affection, explained how it all worked. I showed her sanitized case studies from work, walked her through the architecture of secure payment gateways, and even demonstrated some of the tracking software on my laptop. I wasn't just explaining my job. I was handing her a map. We were married 5 years later in a small, tasteful ceremony with a reasonable budget. Chloe had lobbied for something much grander, a lavish affair that would rival the opulent wedding Jessica had thrown a year prior. Jessica had married a venture capitalist and now lived in a sprawling glass house in Cherry Hills Village, driving a German sports car that cost more than my annual salary. The comparisons started subtle, then spread. Casual comments about Jessica's new designer handbag, her winter getaway to St. Bart's, the Michelin-starred restaurants she frequented. Chloe never complained directly about our life, but the subtext was loud and clear. we were falling behind. I took on freelance consulting gigs to supplement our income, spending long nights helping startups fortify their digital security. The extra money helped pay for nicer vacations and more expensive dinners, but it could never bridge the chasm between our reality and the fantasy life Jessica broadcasted online. Chloe started working more hours at the watch boutique, yet her paychecks seemed to shrink. When I questioned it, she blamed a new manager for slashed commissions. It seemed plausible. The luxury retail market was notoriously volatile. The more overt warning signs had been flashing for weeks. Probing questions about my travel schedule for work. Casual inquiries about banking security protocols. How quickly are suspicious transactions flagged? What specific spending amounts trigger automated alerts? She framed it as curiosity. It was recon. Then, a month ago, she began the wallet searches. Always when I was distracted, always with a plausible excuse. She was looking for a receipt that was perpetually somewhere else. She was searching for a business card I never carried. I should have confronted her immediately, but a cold, professional part of me, the part honed by years of cyber sleuthing, needed to know just how far she was willing to go. In my line of work, assumptions are liabilities. Hard, verifiable data is the only thing that matters. The morning the bait card vanished, Chloe made French toast, her movements around the kitchen light and carefree. The routine felt normal. She casually mentioned that she might meet Jessica for lunch. Nothing expensive, she promised, kissing me goodbye at the door. You know how careful I am. I watched her car pull out of the driveway, then immediately turned to my laptop and pulled up the monitoring dashboard. The card was already active. The first alert pinged at 9:52 a.m. A single transaction, $900 at an upscale boutique in the Cherry Creek shopping district. I was in a quarterly review meeting with a major client when my phone buzzed with the notification. Any purchase over $600 pinged my phone. I excused myself, stepped into the hallway, and examined the details. She had used the card at a store she'd pointed out just last week, a place specializing in imported Italian leather goods. 45 minutes later, another alert came through. For $1,000. Same store. Then another, and another. By the end of lunch, she'd burned through $15,000. Handbags, shoes, a tennis bracelet. Each purchase was a digital pin on a map, logged with precise GPS coordinates and timestamp data. I sat in my parked car, the city skyline of Denver a blur through the windshield, watching the alerts accumulate on my screen. This wasn't impulse. It was a list. She had a list and was working through it with ruthless efficiency. At 2:15 p.m., the nature of the attack changed dramatically. Then a travel agency charge, $7,000 in international tickets. The transaction data was rich, including full passenger manifests and destination information. Rome, business class, departing tomorrow. I drove home in a daze and immediately checked our joint accounts. Untouched. It was a smart move. Draining our shared money would have been an instant red flag and much harder to explain away. But the bait card was a ghost, an asset linked to an account she never knew existed, designed for this exact scenario. That evening, Chloe was the perfect wife. She cooked a gourmet dinner, regaled me with stories about her day, complained about the traffic, and gushed about the amazing deals she and Jessica had found. It was flawless. Without the feeds, I might have believed her. After dinner, she began packing a large suitcase. Jessica invited me on a last-minute wellness retreat, she announced, her voice brimming with feigned excitement. It's her treat. Isn't that generous? That's very generous, I replied, my own voice a hollow echo. We leave first thing in the morning. I'll probably be gone through the weekend. I helped her carry the suitcase to her car in the garage, kissed her goodbye, and watched her drive away, off to what she claimed was a local spa retreat. 30 minutes later, airport long-term parking. Then, for several hours, silence. At 3 o'clock in the morning, my phone lit up. Transaction after transaction, all originating from Rome. 5-star hotels, high-end restaurants in Trastevere, designer boutiques near the Spanish Steps. The bait card was now funding a lavish European vacation while I sat in our quiet Denver condo, watching a live feed of every stolen dollar being spent. She thought she was stealing. She was documenting. I poured myself a strong coffee and settled in for a long night. 12 years of fraud investigation had taught me the value of patience. Evidence gathered carefully, methodically, and without emotion was evidence that would stand up in a federal court. By the end of the week, she had spent nearly $60,000 of what she was convinced was my money. Little did she know, her European holiday was about to become an international incident. The international alerts began flooding the system on the second day of Chloe's supposed retreat. The fraud monitoring suite wasn't just a simple notification system. It was designed to detect and analyze the sophisticated patterns of global financial crime, and it was performing its function perfectly. Every purchase she made in Rome triggered cascading notifications that propagated through multiple databases: my personal monitoring system, Sentinel Cybernetics Institutional Network, and several international financial tracking protocols. By Thursday, Chloe's spending spree had tripped security measures far beyond her comprehension. The bait card was no longer just being monitored by me. It was now flagged by automated systems that track suspicious international spending patterns and potential money laundering activities. Her extravagant purchases in Rome, a first-class flight paid for with a card that had been dormant for its entire existence, followed by tens of thousands of dollars in luxury goods spent in less than 48 hours, was the textbook definition of anomalous behavior. It was the kind of spending pattern that sent crimson red flags shooting through the core of international banking networks. On Friday morning, I received a call from Special Agent Olivia Vance with Homeland Security Investigations. FinCEN had flagged the pattern and looped HSI in. It was the same federal agency I frequently consulted with on complex corporate cases. "Ethan, we've detected highly unusual activity on one of your monitored accounts," she said, her voice professional and direct. "International transactions, extremely high volume. The pattern suggests potential unauthorized usage." "I'm aware, Olivia," I replied, staring at a screen filled with transaction data. "It's part of a domestic fraud investigation on my end." "A personal investigation?" she asked, a note of surprise in her voice. "Someone close to me has been accessing financial information without authorization. I set up a monitored honeypot account to document the extent of the fraud." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Ethan, are you telling me you're running a sting operation on a member of your own household?" "I'm documenting unauthorized access to financial accounts," I clarified. "The subject believes they're accessing the funds without detection. They are mistaken." Agent Vance was quiet for a moment. "How much money are we talking about?" "Approximately $58,000 so far. All tracked, all documented, all connected to accounts the subject was never authorized to use." "Ethan, do you understand what you've inadvertently stumbled into?" she said, her tone shifting from inquisitive to serious. "This isn't just a personal fraud case anymore. Sustained high-value international activity like this auto-triggers AML scrutiny across multiple systems. Italian authorities have been alerted. Immigration has her passport tagged for enhanced screening upon her return to the U.S. I leaned back in my desk chair, the reality of the situation sinking in. Chloe's fantasy vacation had escalated from simple theft into a multi-jurisdictional international financial crime investigation. Her unauthorized use of the bait card had woven a digital breadcrumb trail that now spanned multiple countries and involved numerous law enforcement agencies. "What happens when she tries to come home?" I asked. "Enhanced customs screening, at a minimum. Detailed financial questioning. If she can't provide a legitimate source of funds for the purchases she's bringing back, things will get complicated for her very quickly." But what Agent Vance told me next shattered everything I thought I understood about Chloe's betrayal. "Ethan, we've been cross-referencing your wife's transaction patterns across several networks," she said. "This isn't her first time using stolen financial information for international travel." My stomach plummeted. "What do you mean?" "We found nearly identical patterns going back 18 months across multiple cards. Different credit cards, different accounts, but the same signature behavior. Luxury travel, high-end shopping sprees, first-class accommodations." I felt the blood drain from my face. "That's impossible. She's never traveled internationally without me." According to our records, she has made 4 previous solo trips to Europe using financial information that was not registered in her name. Milan, Florence, and Venice. Always first class, always 5-star hotels, and always funded through accounts she shouldn't have had access to. The room began to feel like it was tilting on its axis. "Whose accounts?" "We're still digging," but our preliminary evidence suggests she's been siphoning financial data from multiple sources. Credit cards belonging to her employer, former roommates, even members of her own family. That evening, as if on cue, Chloe called from Rome. The background noise was a symphony of clinking glasses and muted chatter. She was clearly in an expensive restaurant. "Ethan, darling, I'm having the most incredible time," she chirped. "Jessica knows all the most perfect places here. We've been shopping on Via Condotti, dining at these amazing restaurants." I let her talk, my mind racing. She had just admitted to being in Rome when she was supposed to be at a local wellness retreat. "Rome?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. There was a beat of silence. Then, a brittle, forced laugh. "Did I say Rome? I meant the retreat's European theme. Classical music, accents, the whole thing. You know, classical music. The staff all have these charming accents. It's just like being in Rome without ever leaving Colorado." Sounds elaborate. "Oh, you know these high-end places. Everything is themed now. Oh, I found the most amazing little boutique in the gift shop. I got you something really special." After she hung up, I checked the monitoring logs. 3 more purchases had posted that evening. $2,500 at a renowned restaurant, $2,000 at a fine wine merchant, and $5,000 at a jewelry store on a street famed for its luxury brands. On Monday morning, Agent Vance called again. "Ethan, we need to talk in person. The international scope of this case has expanded far beyond personal fraud. Can you come down to the federal building this afternoon?" I drove downtown and met Agent Vance in a sterile conference room. The walls were covered with whiteboards filled with diagrams, and the table was littered with transaction printouts and laptops displaying financial tracking data. "Your wife's spending pattern has now triggered active investigations in 4 countries, she stated, pointing to a map on one of the screens. The U.S., Italy, France, and Spain. The sheer volume of transactions, the focus on luxury goods, the sudden international travel, it all points to either sophisticated money laundering or an organized financial crime ring." "It's not an organized crime ring," I said, my voice tight. "It's personal greed. It's betrayal." "I understand that on a personal level, Ethan, but the evidence doesn't care about motive. What matters to us is the pattern of criminal behavior and the digital paper trail she's created." Agent Vance then pulled out a file. "We spoke with her friend, Jessica. She was very cooperative." My heart sank. Jessica hasn't seen or spoken to Chloe in over a month. She knew nothing about a wellness retreat, and she certainly isn't in Rome. The final pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with sickening clarity. Chloe had been using Jessica as a convenient alibi for years. Every girl's trip, every wellness retreat with Jessica had been a solo crime spree, a lavish vacation funded entirely with stolen money. The full weight of her deception hit me like a physical blow. The woman I had shared my life with was a complete stranger, a professional criminal hiding in plain sight. That evening, I did something I should have done months ago. I systematically searched Chloe's belongings. Tucked away at the bottom of her jewelry box, hidden beneath velvet lining, I found a small, leather-bound notebook. Inside were pages of card numbers, expiries, and CVVs in neat rows. There were names I didn't recognize next to the numbers. Account information for cards that clearly weren't hers. At the very back, there was a chillingly organized list of European cities, each with corresponding dates and dollar amounts, a cold, hard ledger documenting 18 months of systematic theft. My phone rang, shattering the silence. It was Chloe, calling from Rome. "Ethan, I'll be home tomorrow evening. I can't wait to see you." "I can't wait to see you too," I said, my voice devoid of any warmth. What I didn't tell her was that a team of federal agents would be waiting for her as well. On Saturday morning, Agent Vance called with the final coordination details. Chloe's flight was scheduled to land at Denver International Airport at 8:15 p.m. Customs and Border Protection had been fully briefed on the multi-agency investigation. Immigration officials were prepared to execute enhanced screening procedures the moment her passport was scanned. "When she lands, she'll go through the standard passport checkpoint first," Agent Vance explained over the phone. "The system will flag her there, and she'll be directed to secondary inspection. That's where we'll start asking detailed questions about how she paid for all those luxury purchases." "What happens if she tries to claim I authorized all the spending?" I asked, already knowing the answer. We will contact you directly to verify that story. But Ethan, the evidence we've compiled suggests this goes far beyond the unauthorized use of your accounts. She has been operating a sophisticated, multi-victim financial fraud scheme for over a year and a half. I spent the rest of the day in a surreal state of preparation, methodically preparing for the end of my marriage. I organized the physical evidence I had gathered into a neat pile on my desk and reviewed the transaction logs from the bait card one final time. By evening, the total spending on the card had reached $78,500. Every single purchase was documented, every transaction was tracked, and every dollar spent created another irrefutable piece of evidence for federal prosecutors. At 8:05 p.m., I received a text from Chloe. Just landed. Can't wait to show you everything I got. See you soon. Hugs and kisses. 30 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Agent Vance. She's in secondary inspection, she reported. CBP agents found over $40,000 in undeclared luxury goods in her luggage, designer handbags, jewelry, expensive clothing. When questioned about the source of funds, she claimed her husband had given her permission to use his credit card for the trip. And you told them? We're in the process of verifying her story as we speak. Are you prepared to make an official statement regarding the authorization for these purchases? I looked at the transaction logs displayed on my computer screen. $78,500 in unauthorized charges. A criminal ledger filled with stolen financial information. A long list of victims. I never authorized any spending on that account. I stated clearly. She accessed my financial information without permission and used it to fund international travel and luxury purchases. That's what we anticipated, Agent Vance said. Ethan, you should also know that she was carrying a second set of credit cards. The names and numbers don't match any cards tied to your household. The stolen card information from her notebook. Even on her return flight, she had been carrying the tools and evidence of her crimes. At 9:20 p.m., Agent Vance called again. She's been arrested. We're charging her with multiple counts of access device fraud, aggravated identity theft, and international money laundering. The digital evidence from your monitoring system, combined with the stolen cards we found in her possession, gives us an exceptionally strong federal case. What happens now? I asked, feeling a strange sense of detachment. She'll be transported to a federal holding facility and held pending her arraignment. Given the international scope of the crimes and the complex methods she employed, she is looking at significant prison time. At 10 p.m., a call came through from a number I didn't recognize. Ethan, it's Chloe, she said, her voice small and shaky. They're letting me make one phone call. There's been a terrible, terrible misunderstanding. Can you please come to the airport and clear this all up? What kind of misunderstanding, Chloe? They think I stole money to pay for the trip. I told them you gave me permission to use your card. You just need to come down here and tell them it was all authorized, and then we can go home. I stared at the cold, hard numbers on my screen. The ledger of her deceit. The list of victims. The years of lies. Chloe, I never gave you permission to use any of my accounts. A heavy silence hung on the line. I could hear the sterile, indifferent sounds of a government facility in the background. Ethan, please, she whispered, her voice cracking. I can explain everything. I'm sure you can, I replied, my voice as cold as ice. Save the explanation for your lawyer. I hung up the phone and then powered it off. The condo felt quiet, truly quiet, for the first time in years. The arraignment was scheduled for Wednesday morning at the federal courthouse in downtown Denver. I sat in the back of the gallery as Chloe was brought into the courtroom, her designer clothes replaced by a drab orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed behind her back. The woman who had confidently spent tens of thousands of dollars in Rome looked small and defeated, diminished by the crushing reality of federal criminal charges. Assistant U.S. Attorney read the charges aloud in a clear, unwavering voice. Credit card fraud, aggravated identity theft, international money laundering, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. Each charge carried potential prison sentences measured in years, not months. Your Honor, attorney began, addressing the judge. The defendant engaged in a sophisticated and prolonged criminal enterprise spanning over 18 months. She systematically accessed and exploited financial information belonging to multiple victims, used that information to fund a lifestyle of luxury international travel, and attempted to conceal her crimes through a web of elaborate deception. Chloe's court-appointed public defender requested bail, arguing that she was a first-time offender with strong ties to the community. Attorney countered by methodically presenting the evidence of the international scope of her crimes, the sophisticated methods she used to acquire stolen data, and the substantial financial losses incurred by her numerous victims. The defendant poses a significant flight risk, Your Honor, she argued. She has demonstrated a clear pattern of international travel funded by stolen money. She has shown a high degree of expertise in accessing and exploiting financial systems, and the evidence suggests she was actively planning additional crimes at the time of her arrest. Judge David Carter reviewed the evidence presented, including the damning notebook of stolen credit card information found in Chloe's possession and the meticulously detailed transaction logs from my monitoring system. The court finds the defendant poses a significant flight risk and an economic danger to the community, Judge Carter ruled. Bail is denied. Outside the courthouse, Agent Vance handed me a folder. The $78,500 from your bait account will be returned within 45 days, she said. As for the other victims, we're working with our international law enforcement partners to trace and recover as much of the stolen funds as possible. I drove back to an empty house and began the painstaking process of changing every password, closing every joint account, and scrubbing every trace of the financial life Chloe had ever had access to. 5 months later, faced with an overwhelming mountain of evidence, Chloe pleaded guilty to all federal charges. The digital trail from my monitoring system, the physical ledger of stolen credit cards, and the testimony from her other victims, who had unknowingly funded her European adventures, had left her with no legal recourse. She was sentenced to 108 months in a federal prison, to be followed by 48 months of supervised release. The court ordered over $400,000 in restitution to victims from the 18-month scheme. The watch boutique where she worked was also investigated. The owner, a man named David Chun, discovered that Chloe had been photographing customer cards at the register, harvesting data from high-net-worth clients. 5 additional victims came forward, all customers of the store who had later discovered a string of unauthorized charges on their accounts. Jessica called me after the sentencing hearing. Ethan, I had absolutely no idea what she was doing. All those times she told me you two were traveling together. She was lying to everyone. I know, I said. You weren't the only one she deceived. Is there anything I can do? Just remember, I said, that sometimes the people you think you know best are the ones you don't know at all. I sold the Denver condo 9 months later. It was filled with too many ghosts, too many reminders of the life I thought I had built with someone who had been lying to me from the very beginning. I accepted a new position with a cybersecurity firm in Denver that specialized in advanced financial fraud prevention. The irony was not lost on me. The same skills that made me an expert at catching corporate thieves were the ones that were essential in documenting my own wife's elaborate crimes. The bait card that was intended to catch a suspicious spouse ended up exposing an international criminal operation. 7 years together, and I had been living with a complete stranger who saw me not as a partner, but as just another financial target. But in the end, her greed destroyed her. She got so comfortable with her lies, so sure of her routine, that she made one fatal mistake. She stole from me. And I don't just live with thieves. I catch them. For once, the cybersecurity expert wasn't just the victim. I became the one who built the trap and delivered the justice myself. Thank you for listening.